is there an understanding and a realization of existence that is free of the root conditions that you are experiencing fearfully? And of course, I'm telling you there is. There's also something about fear that has a practical value. Without it, you wouldn't do what was necessary to protect the body under various natural circumstances that require an immediate reaction for the sake of safety. You wouldn't want to be so benumbed in the midst of daily life that you couldn't react to something dangerous and get out of the way. So there's also something very practically useful about fear in its moment. Cats are very sensuous. They was walking around rubbing themselves on things, purring away and so forth. They look like they haven't a care in the world, but just like that, if anything comes up that requires a reaction, or a mouse that they can enjoy tormenting, anything that requires a sudden reaction, which inevitably has a fearful characteristic in it, because there's so much sudden energy and chemical change and so forth, they're always ready. Zap, they do it. And then the next moment, they're perfectly calm again. So this kind of capability for fear is certainly not something you would want to have tranquilized to the point where it's no longer available to you. You wouldn't be able to function safely in the midst of ordinary things. That's not a kind of fear that one would rightly want to get rid of, unless one is just an addict of some kind who wants to be totally dysfunctional. But apart from that, practical usefulness of fear, the fear you're describing is a kind of philosophical or philosophically significant condition. It's the noticing of the fundamental condition in which you're living. The way I have given you all is the means for transcending just exactly that. It's not a diversion, a way of being addicted to some manipulation of the body-mind that just makes you feel good at will by some technique or other. As long as things aren't too bad, you can always sit down and meditate and relax. You've perhaps noticed one another. You think that's bliss. It's no more bliss than an orgasm is bliss. It's that kind of bliss, if you want to use the word for it. In other words, it's a temporary state of pleasure in the body. It has nothing to do with transcending fear. It is simply an experiential diversion that covers it. So the kind of self-manipulative games people play that have the look of meditation or religion about them, you see, are devices, techniques, whereby people divert themselves from experiencing reality, and reality in the conditional sense. And it's inherent fearfulness, it's inherent danger, it's inherent mortality. So that kind of meditation isn't worth squat. It's nothing more than relaxation. It's just another form of self-pleasuring. It's a technique. And it's temporary, and if this kind of, everything is just so sweet, and you suddenly were tapped on the shoulder by something with a mouth on it about this big. You're going to be immediately returned to your sensitivity to like inherent fear. So, fine, there are states that are meditative that look like that, so I'm not mocking them entirely, but on the other hand, they have no ultimate significance whatsoever. So, it is a moment-to-moment realization. Moment-to-moment practice, moment-to-moment renunciation, moment-to-moment realization. This is all that works, and nothing else does. All the rest is a diversion, a hoped-for, pleasurable distraction. So you have had some experiences fairly recently that were traumatic, and feel this has even created a kind of fear reaction, built it into the body, and now you're afraid of it too. You're afraid of being afraid of being afraid. But it doesn't make any difference whether you're afraid, or you're afraid of being afraid, or you're afraid of being afraid of being afraid, or you're afraid of being afraid of being afraid of being afraid, or on and on to the nth degree. It's still the same thing. And you have to do the same thing about it. And why add a lot of imagination to it? Fear is all the same, and it's completely justified. You have every right to be afraid. You're in a position which is completely justified to be afraid, and there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't be, so you should be quite happy about the fact. Behaving and feeling quite normally. There's nothing wrong with you. You are completely well, my son. But if you're seriously asking the question about fundamental fear itself, well, haven't I addressed this? The way I've given you is my address to that question that is the totality of your life. See, it's not a bunch of myths or things for you to believe that are somehow supposed to make you feel that fear is unjustified and everything is just okay. No, everything is really not okay. So, but that's a fact only from the point of view you are presuming, and that is what must be examined and transcended, and not by merely thinking about it. You will think about it inevitably, but that's not the way. The way is exactly as I've given it to you to practice, and that's exactly what you should do about it. And do so moment to moment, in other words. Endeavor to be constantly doing this sadhana and developing the real process of it instead of remaining at the beginning of it forever. Simply bound up not only in unsatisfactory states, but not even entering into the real process whereby they are understood and ultimately transcended by spiritual means. Sadhana proves itself. Do the sadhana consistently for real instead of doing something else, which is like sitting around and hallucinating your fear more and more, wasting your time turning the faculties on themselves instead of turning to me and profoundly practicing. Instead of wasting your time doing what is unproductive about it and trying to get rid of something you cannot get rid of, spend your time doing as I've instructed. Embrace me and enter into the process of communion with me, whereby you will utterly transcend not just the feeling of fear because it's inevitable in this state here, but transcend the very state you are presuming to be in. The sadhana of this way truly and most profoundly entered into, enters you fully consciously into the domain of reality itself, the divine domain of reality that transcends conditionality, and that activity which makes all illusions, including fear. As long as there is the self-contraction, the presumption of separateness, there is fear. And there is no two ways about it. It's inevitable, it's inherent. So, transcend this. The way is the way of transcending the self-not, the self-contraction, which is not just something somewhere inside the body, it is the totality of the body-mind that's participating in this, and that is reflecting this act. This is what must be gone beyond. This not is fear. It is also separateness. It's the feeling of difference. It's the feeling of relatedness. It's the presumption of being identical to the body or the body-mind. Limited by it, living limited to it, limited by and to all of the ordinary appearances of conditional existence, all of which pass, and all of the grosser appearances of human existence, all of which are mortal.